So students, in this lecture, we are going to study that how our kidneys can control blood pressure, how they affect our blood pressure. So when we talk about kidneys, the most important discussion regarding kidneys is about the renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system. So this system is concerned with the kidneys. This renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system is basically a system which affects your blood pressure, and this system has three major components, that is renin, angiotensin, and aldosterone. So now in this section we will discuss that how these three elements control blood pressure. So coming towards the discussion, you must know that our arterial blood pressure is basically dependent on or is directly proportional to cardiac output or peripheral resistance. So whenever there will be increase in cardiac output, or whenever there will be increase in peripheral vascular resistance, ultimately there will be increase in our blood pressure. So what happens whenever there is decrease in blood pressure? So how your kidneys will respond to that decrease in blood pressure? So when we talk about kidneys, you must know that our kidneys contains our most important receptor, that is beta receptor. So in ANS, we have already discussed that basically beta receptors are of three types: beta 1, beta 2, and beta 3. So our kidneys contain beta 1 receptor. Whenever there is decrease in blood pressure, there will be activation of beta 1 receptors. Whenever there is activation of alpha 1 receptors, these alpha 1 receptor will release an enzyme, that is renin. Now, what this enzyme will do? This enzyme will then convert angiotensinogen into angiotensin 1. And now this angiotensin 1 will be converted into angiotensin 2, which is the most important component which is required to increase your blood pressure. So basically this angiotensin 2 is a vasoconstrictor. So now what are the steps involved in getting this angiotensin 2? So whenever there is decrease in blood pressure, there will be activation of beta 1 receptor. Due to this activation, there will be release of renin, that is an enzyme from the kidneys. Now, what this renin will do, this will convert angiotensinogen into angiotensin 1. So, now, what is angiotensinogen? Basically, this angiotensinogen is a precursor protein that is produced by the liver. Now, your renin, your enzyme renin will convert this angiotensinogen. Your renin will convert this protein into angiotensin 1. So now after getting angiotensin 1, we will get angiotensin 2. Now how this angiotensin 1 is converted into angiotensin 2? This conversion basically requires an enzyme that is located in the lungs and the kidneys. The name of this enzyme is ACE, that is angiotensin converting enzyme. ACE, A for angiotensin, C for converting, E for enzyme. Now in the lungs, this enzyme is produced by the vascular endothelial cells, and in the kidneys, this is generated by the renal endothelium. So in the kidneys, this enzyme will convert this angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2, which is a vasoconstrictor. Now, what this vasoconstrictor will do? This will ultimately act on adrenal medulla. So, what are the enzymes involved for this action? Basically, this angiotensin 2 act on two different type of receptors. The first receptor is angiotensin type 1 receptor, that is angiotensin type 2 1 receptor, angiotensin 2 type 1 receptor, 81, and 82 angiotensin type 2 receptor. So here 81 is A for angiotensin 2, T for type, and 1 is 1. So 81 and 82 are activated by angiotensin 2. Among these two enzyme receptors, the most important receptor which is activated by the angiotensin 2 is the angiotensin 2 type 2 receptor, that is AT2. So until now we have discussed that this angiotensin 2 is a vasoconstrictor that has ability to act on two different type of receptors And these two receptors are 81 and 82. And among these two receptors, the most prominent receptor which is get activated by angiotensin 2 is 81. That is angiotensin 2 type 1 receptor. So both of these receptors are actually the G protein coupled receptors. Now, whenever there is activation of these receptors, what will happen? So, probably these receptors are present on adrenal medulla. So, whenever there is activation of angiotensin 2 receptors, type 1 receptor. So, whenever there is activation of 81 by angiotensin 2, what will happen? Now, this angiotensin 2 will then act on the adrenal cortex. This adrenal cortex will release a hormone that is mineralocorticoid or is a steroid hormone. And name of this hormone is aldosterone. Here this figure is representing that this angiotensin 2 is acting on adrenal medulla, and now this adrenal medulla is releasing aldosterone. So which part of adrenal medulla is actually releasing this aldosterone? This is released by, here the name is mentioned, zona glomerulosa. Now, where this zona glomerulosa is present, this is actually under the capsule. So, you can say this is a superficial layer of adrenal medulla, which is the zona glomerulosa. So, this zona glomerulosa will release mineralocorticoid. Name of this mineralocorticoid is aldosterone. So there are different type of mineralocorticoids, for example, progesterone and deoxycorticosterone. Among them, the most important regarding blood pressure is the aldosterone. So aldosterone will now act on your nephron. Now, which part of the nephron? It will act on the cells of the collecting duct. So whenever there will be increase in production of aldosterone, this aldosterone will act on the collecting duct, cells of the collecting duct. As a result of this, there will be increase in expression or increase in production of the sodium channels. And the name of these sodium channels is the epithelial sodium channels. ENACE for epithelial, Na is representing sodium, and C is the channel. So whenever there is increased expression of the production of the sodium channels, what these sodium channel will do, they will reabsorb sodium from the urine. Okay. Now, reabsorption means re-entry of this sodium back to the blood. So this is a general rule that whenever there is reabsorption of salt or the sodium, there is also reabsorption of water. It means water follows the salt, water follows the sodium. So whenever there will be reabsorption of the water, it means we are increasing the water volume in the extracellular fluid. So ultimately there will be increase in the blood volume. So due to increase in blood volume, there will be increase in the venous return. As a result, there will be arterial stretch, and then there will be increase in cardiac output. So due to this increase in cardiac output, there will be increase in blood pressure. So this is the diagram of Lipincourt that is representing how your body responds whenever there is decrease in blood pressure. So whenever there is decrease in blood pressure, what will happen? There will be activation of your sympathetic activities. There will be activation of your sympathetic nervous system. Now this system will basically activate two different type of receptors which are located at three different locations. So these two different type of receptors are alpha-1 receptors and the beta-1 receptors. Beta-1 receptors are located on heart and the kidney. So until now we have two locations, heart and the kidney. Now these alpha-1 receptors will act on the smooth muscles. So whenever there is activation of alpha-1 and beta-1 receptor, there will be ultimate increase in cardiac output, venous return, and peripheral resistance, which together will increase in blood pressure. So now what happens whenever there is decrease in blood pressure on the other side? So whenever there is decrease in blood pressure, there will be decrease in renal blood flow. As a result, your kidney will start producing more renin due to activation of beta-1 receptors, and this renin will ultimately release a vasoconstrictor, that is angiotensin 2, and this angiotensin 2 will then follow these three steps and will result in increase in blood pressure. So now, other point, whenever there is decrease in blood pressure, there will be decrease in renal blood flow. As a result, there will be decrease in glomerular filtration rate. So whenever there will be decrease in glomerular filtration rate, there will be increase in sodium channels, there will be increase in expression of sodium channel, there will be increase in reabsorption of the sodium, then there will be increase in reabsorption of water, or you may say this is water retention. As a result, there will be increase in blood volume, and this increase in blood volume will increase the cardiac output, which will result in increase in blood pressure. So students, this was all about that how your kidneys basically